Australia's New South Wales has just reported another 800 new COVID cases, a slight drop from Sunday's record daily high. Meantime, the Prime Minister says the strict COVID measures will come to an end once the vaccination rate hits 70%. The announcement comes after police arrested hundreds of anti-lockdown protesters over the weekend. Angus Watson is in Sydney for us on that. Angus, hi. What's the situation right now? Certainly people have been pretty angry about the way the government has dealt with this, and it's been very much felt on the streets.
Absolutely, Robin. The scenes over the weekend in which violent protesters turned out across Australia's major cities of Sydney or Melbourne is not what many people in the community here wanted to see, and absolutely not what politicians wanted to see. The politicians that have been telling their citizens to stay at home across major cities in Sydney, in the capital Canberra, and Melbourne as well. In Melbourne, particularly violent scenes on Saturday. And that's just the beginning of Scott Morrison's troubles, the Prime Minister of Australia. He was lauded for his success in 2020 with keeping the virus at bay with strict lockdowns and strict border measures, keeping the virus out. But Delta has changed the game for him, meaning he's now saying that case numbers, well, frankly, they may be out of control. They might not be getting down to the low numbers that we saw earlier this year and last year, Robin. Instead, he wants the focus to shift to hospitalisations and deaths. But the problem for him, of course, is Australia's vaccination rates are just too slow. Just over 20% of the population here in Australia is fully vaccinated. Scott Morrison wants lockdowns to become a thing of the past, but that won't be possible until 70 to 80% of adults here in Australia are fully vaccinated, Robin.
And let's also talk about New Zealand, a nationwide lockdown until at least Tuesday, I understand. How likely is that they'll be able to be released from that?
Robin, well, Jacinda Ardern just moments ago has stood up at the lectern in the capital, Wellington, and said that the lockdown will continue until at least Friday. New Zealand has over 100 active cases of COVID-19 in the community at the moment. They were willing to go into lockdown with just one case last week, so that lockdown could be extended even further from Friday if New Zealand can't get those numbers out of control. And the COVID-19 minister in charge, Chris Hipkins, has said that the Delta variant has changed the game in New Zealand as well as it has in Australia. New Zealand, a country which has also done particularly well in keeping the virus out. Just 26 people have died in New Zealand through the entirety of the pandemic. The Delta is changing the game. New Zealand wants to keep its borders closed until the end of the year to give its people a chance to get vaccinated, Robin. So we'll see what success they have in the coming weeks.
Angus Watson there, thanks for that, live in Sydney. Well, let's stick in Australia. I'd like to bring in Sanjaya Senonayaka. He is an infectious diseases specialist and an associate professor at the Australian National University Medical School. Dr. Hi, lovely to see you. You're joining me from Canberra. So is the Prime Minister acknowledging that the restrictions in Australia so far has been overkill, too tough, not effective in the long run?
Oh, look, I don't know about that, Robin. We certainly are trying to find that fine balance with trying to get life to move on normally without all the economic and psychological and medical hardships we've seen with COVID, but also balancing that with making sure that the healthcare system doesn't get overwhelmed. So a lot of the country is in lockdown at the moment. In fact, where I am in Canberra is in lockdown.
Yeah, and many Australians seem to think that these lockdowns are never ending. Has the Australian leadership, do you think, been beaten by this virus and trying to retreat into an island nation mentality, but at the same time not managing to deal with it when Delta turned up? How much has Delta changed the conversation for Australians?
Oh, look, Robin, Delta has been a game changer. So we had the Alpha variant enter the country, would have been at the end of last year or the very start of this year, and we had a number of incursions through hotel quarantine into the community in different parts of the country. And we were all very worried because we knew it was more infectious than the other Wuhan strain, but that never bore fruit. We were able to get on top of it no matter what state or jurisdiction was involved. But Delta is different. It is far more infectious And once it gets a foothold in a community, it is spreading like wildfire. So that has changed the mentality. And even the vaccination rate in Australia has just accelerated in response to seeing what Delta can do.
Why is the vaccination rate so low? I mean, again, is this another failure by the government?
So again, very interesting, Robin. If you look at the countries that, it seems to be a tale almost of two halves. So if you look at countries that controlled COVID really well through last year, so Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, South Korea, and you look now, they've got relatively slow vaccine rollouts. And that's a contrast to countries which really struggled with COVID, like the US and the UK, who've done very well with their vaccine rollouts. And I think you can see in Australia, by the surge in vaccinations in response to the lockdowns and the Delta outbreaks, that seeing what Delta can do, whatever part of the world you're in, will accelerate your vaccine rollout. And that's what's happening here.
But I just want to get, I mean, for many Australians, having this number of 70% or 80% vaccinated, it's kind of going to be a moving target, isn't it? Particularly if boosters come into play, because you're never really going to get on top by hitting a finite 70%, because you're having to play catch up with whoever gets vaccinated and needs a booster in 8 months. Particularly also the fact that a lot of people, 20% perhaps of the population and certain teenagers, you know, really make up that dent into 70%. So it just, the numbers will never add up. And that means for many Australians, this is endless.
Well, I think not just for Australians, I think around the world, vaccination, it's wonderful. It's amazing that we have it.
But for the Australians, putting a 70% finite number on this, I mean, you're never going to be able to pin it down, because the vaccinations wane in efficacy. So you're never going to be able to have a finite, okay, everybody is 70% vaccinated, because you're going to need boosters for the people who got vaccinated 8 months ago.
No, you're quite right. That's what I was saying. As wonderful as the vaccines are, with the waning immunity and Delta being so infectious, we're never going to achieve herd immunity. So it is going to be a matter of vaccinating as much of the population as we can, catching up with booster doses, and working around that. And we will, all those measures, those COVID-safe measures we've been seeing around the world, social distancing, wearing masks, those things are here to stay. So it won't be a completely normal life for a very long time, Robin, for any of us.
No, and for many Australians that you speak to, how angry are they? We've seen them over the weekend on the streets, but in terms of ordinary people who are locked in their houses, and you know, police are chasing them on the beach, and there's been a pretty tough lockdown in terms of consequences. The mental health and the broader implications for society, not being able to leave, Australians not being able to get in. How damaging has this been?
Oh, look, of course, the lockdowns have enormous amount of negative consequences, and you do see that manifesting with the protest. But at the same time, a lot of people are understanding and are compliant. But the problem is, because Delta is so infectious, any non-compliance is so unforgiving. But you are right, Robin. I think we will all breathe a sigh of relief when we can come out of this lockdown. But it's not going to be into herd immunity. It's going to be a combination of getting high vaccination rates and COVID-safe measures to try and lead some sort of normal life.